35,000 shillings. These are powerful investments in social inclusion. But a funny thing happened on the way to the pay point. Researchers looking at these programs discovered that even though they're designed to include people, to tackle poverty and vulnerability, and to share the benefits of economic growth more broadly on the highway to prosperity, they were also the government's best investments in human capital development, in livelihoods empowerment. And governments began to ask, if we get all these developmental impacts without even trying, what would happen if we tried? And that triggered a second wave of social protection programming, building comprehensiveness. BRAC was one of the first organizations internationally to start graduation programs. But South Africa began to integrate human capital into these kinds of programs and saw that cash plus services had powerful developmental impacts. Today, this is the norm. And programs in Uganda, like Girls Empowering Girls with the Kampala Capital City Authority, are models of youth development that other countries across Africa and around the world are learning from. And I want to highlight one particular second wave program, Uganda's new child disability benefit, because it is so important, first in terms of adequacy, providing 100,000 shillings a month, initially aiming to reach 7,000 children, and adopting a comprehensive approach. It's not just a cash transfer. It provides and supports access to health and education services. It helps people with disabilities, children with disabilities, access assistive devices. It provides sensitization to change the social norms that create more inclusive environments for children with disabilities. It's a broad second wave program promoting socioeconomic inclusion. But today, we face unprecedented crisis in global development cooperation. And this crisis is interacting with accelerating megatrends, demographic change. Uganda has one of the world's youngest populations, and that's a huge potential dividend if we can identify ways to build the human capital of children and ensure they transition to adulthood with opportunities to contribute to the social and economic life of their families, their communities, and the nation. We're also facing, though, technological changes like artificial intelligence that are creating huge shocks to labor markets, and of course, climate change. And this is giving rise to a third wave of social protection that takes the infrastructure, which is so important for the government of Uganda's development strategy, and interweaves it with the software of social protection to provide more developmental impacts. We've seen this third wave emerging for decades, but today it's more important than ever that social protection provide and support the social dimension of larger developmental strategies. And one reason why is because this is the best pathway we know to overcome the biggest bottleneck to expanding coverage, to expanding adequacy, to improving comprehensiveness, and that is more money. A couple years ago, we could look to development partners to help support the funding gaps, or we could motivate government to expand domestic resource mobilization. But all across Africa and around the world, governments are more indebted than ever before. And global development cooperation is seeing dramatic declines in global resourcing. So how can Uganda, how can Africa, how can countries around the world finance the important imperatives of expanding coverage and adequacy and improving comprehensiveness? We see across the continent an emerging financing framework. It starts with national ownership. This is the African Union Agenda 2063's main objective. Africa finances its own development. When we saw a chainsaw taken to USAID earlier this year, leaders across Africa said, this is a wake-up call. We need to increase domestic resource mobilization. And interestingly, a poll of countries around the world identified that the one region of the world most willing to pay more to finance climate action, to finance the kinds of reforms that improve people's lives, are in Africa, with more than about 3 out of 4 people willing to pay 1% of their income in order to support these vital global public goods. And so Africa is in a good position to begin, as it grows into more prosperous nations with expanded fiscal resources, to take on the primary role in financing expansion of coverage and improvements in adequacy and comprehensiveness. But how do we get to the point of a prosperous economy that can afford this greater investment? There are 3 on-ramps to this highway to prosperity. And one is new roles for development partners. We see dramatic cuts in what many of us have seen as the primary role for development partners to help pay for these vital social and economic investments. As that money dissipates, development partners are taking on new roles, convening complex partnerships, building government capacity, sharing the global public goods that knowledge and cooperation represent. And we see many of the fruits of this cooperation. Next year, Ethiopia will host an Africa-wide conference, and development partners are supporting the participation of African governments in this vital initiative. And the third thing I want to highlight here is the importance of green finance, because social protection programs across Africa are not just providing expanded coverage and improved benefits and more developmental linkages to social and economic services. They're also mitigating climate change. But African governments are leaving green finance on the table, often because accessing this finance is so complicated. Development partners in their new role are strengthening the capacity of governments to access this green finance. One of the fastest growing domains of green finance are dual purpose mitigation and adaptation investments. What is that? Well, for example, an investment in a disability benefit for children builds their human capital. And human capital enables people to not only roll with the punches that climate shocks are dishing out, that's adaptation, it also enables them to seize the economic opportunities that a transition to green economies offers. That's mitigation. SAGE builds human capital. Girls Empowering Girls builds human capital. All of these initiatives should be accessing green finance in their dual purpose role as adaptation and mitigation, one of the fastest growing areas of green finance. And the government of Uganda has built into its climate action policy an explicit objective of tackling energy poverty. And I want to finally focus on a 4th pillar of this new financing framework, one of the most exciting pillars. A couple days ago, I was in Nairobi presenting on the political economy of social protection finance. And one of those opportunities in expanding finance is an initiative coming out of Ethiopia to build a new kind of public-private alliance to bring together both government actors in social protection and private sector partners to listen to their ideas. And one of the people in that meeting a couple of days ago was a partnership coordinator for Equity Bank, a new kind of bank, a transformation finance institution. And she immediately insisted that all of us meet with her CEO, who described the kinds of approaches a bank has taken to social transformation. The biggest scholarship program in Africa, training students from remote rural areas who graduate from college and want to become doctors. And he coordinates an arrangement with international medical schools to train them to be doctors who are interested in returning to their communities in remote rural areas and provide the most effective, most cost-efficient healthcare any institution in Africa offers, and finds that in these areas where these clinics are being supported in this comprehensive sort of way, default rates, because catastrophic health shocks are one of the greatest threats to people's livelihoods and their ability to pay off loans. This is a win-win-win. It is a win for the private sector, for businesses that become more profitable. It is a win for the country that has one of the most effective ways to deliver vital social services. And of course, it is a win for all the people in Kenya who are participating in this program. This new public-private alliance brings together this innovative thinking and enables government to begin to tackle their challenges with greater resources without necessarily raising taxes and provide broader, more developmental impact. Thank you so much. I am online waiting for your questions and comments. I'll look forward to talking to you more.
Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Samson, Research Director, Economic Policy Research Institute. Those were powerful insights. Private-public alliance is one of the ways he recommends. Okay, we have about 10 minutes for questions. If you have any question about the presentation by Dr. Michael Samson on advancing universal social protection, international and regional perspectives on coverage, adequacy, comprehensiveness, and financing. The issue is that we want comprehensive packages, no pretense. No pretense if we are going to make inroads in social protection. Can I call my colleague who has to move the mic to a question or two? And can I request those who are still serving coffee, do it silently. Do it silently and move to your table, because the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker is about to reach here. So any question, any comment about the presentation before we go to the panel discussion? Michael emphasized the issue of Africa financing its own development. So the issue of domestic resource mobilization is very critical, but also the critical area of investing in human capital development consistent with the Fourth National Development Plan is equally very critical. There's a hand here.
Good morning once again. My name is Janet Nancha from Ministry of Finance. And I don't know if I'm preempting the discussion for the panel, because I see we have a member from the National Social Security Fund. But for me, I just wanted to find out from Dr. Michael, I hope he's online with us.
Yes, he is online.
In his experience, what has been happening with other countries when it comes to leveraging our social protection funds for purposes of making investments for social protection. Because I know that right now the National Social Security Fund stands at 26 trillion. I think a big chunk of that is invested in fixed assets. So given such a substantial, if I may use the word cash load, how do we then leverage that kind of resource to be able to expand our interventions in social protection? Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Any other comment? Michael is online and is listening to us. So I think people have been looking around who is speaking. It was not Mondo, it was Michael. And so just ask your questions will be answered. Any other comment? And Mr. Kasaija will participate in answering some of these hard questions. I will handle the soft ones. Any other comments? I don't see any. Michael, back to you.
Great, thank you. That's an excellent question. And I want to highlight the role of the third wave of social protection and the way it can absorb the kind of investment resources you mentioned. So the core of social protection are the cash transfer programs like SAGE and the new disability benefit. But more developmental programs can build on this with integrated climate development and equity strategies that can scale up the reach of infrastructure investments that promote equity, that create jobs, that deliver services for the most vulnerable. They brought in inclusion, coverage, and adequacy with these complementary programs. And they provide ideal investment opportunities for this kind of fund.
Thank you. And Michael, how do you take on what the minister earlier on mentioned, children being the first line of social protection to their aging parents? What do you think about this scenario?
This is a really important idea. But to have a family-based safety net, we need to invest in our children. We need children to grow into adults who have the economic opportunities to be economically included. And that starts with investing first in the most vulnerable children. And this is why the new disability benefit is so important, but also investing broadly. One of Uganda's best assets is its young population. But to turn that into a pathway to prosperity, we need investment in human capital. And that investment not only delivers a happy childhood, which is children's rights, it also develops the capacity for a more and more prosperous Uganda.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. I don't see any more questions. I want to thank you, and thank you so much for joining us. Can you clap for him? Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much for letting me to join remotely. It's been an honor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Samson, Research Director, Economic Policy Research Institute. Allow me now, ladies and gentlemen, to invite Ms. Gloria Nakajubi, Communication and Advocacy Lead at the Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection, to come and take us through the panel discussion. Gloria will be able to introduce the panelists, and then we can have a shot at a number of issues that are pertinent and are consistent with the subject of discussion, enhancing access to social protection for inclusive socio-economic transformation. Do you mind clapping for Gloria? Yes. Thank you very much, Gloria.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Very glad to see all of you here. For yet another social protection national dialogue. We are very excited as the Social Protection Committee of Practice, Uganda chapter, to host you. Thank you very much for coming. We should clap for ourselves. 3 years in a row, and we are here. We want to thank you so much. I'm going to start off with inviting our panelists, our very distinguished panelists. I'm very excited to host each one of them. I'll start with the Minister of Education and Sports, Mr. Eric Kakole. Mr. Eric, please clap for Mr. Eric. Mr. Eric, as he comes, he is a seasoned public policy expert with over 16 years of professional experience in governance, institutional development, and social protection policy. He holds a master's degree in public policy from the Seoul National University in South Korea and a bachelor's degree in development studies from Makerere University. He has worked in several ministries, including health, agriculture, works and transport, and now Minister of Education. He has led several initiatives aimed at strengthening evidence-based policy and formulation and institutional capacity for inclusive socio-economic transformation. Mr. Kakole, now Assistant Commissioner for Policy, is currently leading the formulation of Uganda's national school feeding policy, designed to enhance nutrition, education outcomes, and community resilience. He has represented the Ministry of Education and Sports at several international forums, including the Global Child Nutrition Forum in Osaka, Japan, that is 2024, the Global School Meals Coalition meeting in Brazil, where he showcased Uganda's progress in integrating school feeding into national social protection system. Mr. Kakole, you're welcome. Our next panelist is Madame Angela Kasule Navowe. Yes. Madame Angela is the Executive Director of Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, that is ISA. Angela ISA is an indigenous social and economic justice NGO in Uganda. And Angela is a human rights advocate and communication for development practitioner. She possesses over a decade experience in researching and advocating for social and economic rights. And that includes education, health, social security, and social protection. She's under the auspices of ISA. Angela has researched and engaged in advocacy at the domestic, regional, and international levels around the link between social protection and the children's rights to education and freedom from child labor, the right to social security for older persons in Uganda, digital ID and access to SAGE, and financing for public services, among others. Angela, you're most welcome. And next on our panel is Mr. Alan Patrice Munavi. Alan is the Strategy Services Manager at the National Social Security Fund. Alan is a social protection expert who played an instrumental role in developing the National Social Protection Policy and advancing Uganda's social security agenda. He works within the Strategy Services function at NSSF Uganda, leading strategic planning, performance measurement, and research insights that support institutional effectiveness. Alan focuses on expanding contributory coverage to informal sector workers, strengthening compliance and improving members' value and post-employment outcomes. He brings to the panel an analytical, evidence-based perspective on building a more inclusive and sustainable social protection system. Alan, you're very welcome. And lastly, I have that one on my phone. Okay. Lastly, we have a representative from Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Mr. Mhumza Francis. Are we here? Yes. So Mr. Francis is a principal economist in the Infrastructure and Social Services Department at the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Francis plays a pivotal role in shaping government policies and programs that drive inclusive growth and social equity. His expertise spans fiscal analysis, social protection, and public investment, ensuring that every government shilling is not only well spent, but also truly transforms lives. Welcome. I think that seems to have concluded our panel. Okay, so welcome our panelists. Okay. On my technology, I'm still trying to get our questions. Okay, first off, I'm going to just get your brief insights. What do you think about the theme of today when you talk about enhancing access to social protection for inclusive socio-economic transformation? From your perspective, from your point of view, or from your areas of expertise, what does that imply? I'll start with Angela.
Okay, thank you very much, Gloria. When you look at the word inclusive in itself, we can actually trigger the SDG framework, which is about, because something being inclusive, literally you're saying, how do we leave no one behind? So if we are to relate it to SDGs, you see that social protection speaks to a number of SDGs. You have SDG number 1, and the very first indicator under that goal, number 1, speaks, for instance, to the number of people who are on any social protection program. So both the global, but also when you look at our indicators that we domesticated. And so we see that as a country, we have made some progress in terms of providing some social protection programs. Of course, gearing towards what an ideal situation would be like, how do we include everyone? But currently our coverage, when you look at the 2025 figures, we are at 5%. But we know that there are a number of initiatives that government is undertaking to make sure that we bring more people into that bracket. But also there are other efforts, like with the NSSF, we know the effort around the informal sector. How do we bring in the formal sector on board? So I think if we took the SDG framework, there is the SDG on poverty, also speaks to about, people who are below the, down at the level, the households under the 40%. When you look at the indicator for education, we've been talking about school feeding programs here, but that indicator, that goal in education also speaks to social protection, because we know that you cannot discuss social protection without discussing education. So using the SDG framework to be able to bring out this, I think is a useful tool, because the SDG framework is inclusive and we are looking at leaving no one behind.
Thank you very much, Angela. Next, Alan, over to you.
So on my side, I think if we look at social protection or closely social security as a basic human right, as it was determined in Article 22 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and we consider it to be a shared responsibility of all of us, policymakers, actors, employers, everyone, if we can all focus our energies to make sure that we actually bring this into effect, that actually everyone across the whole country has access to social security of some sort. And the way I see it is, if we're actually able to also ensure that everyone has access to a dignified job, that can also help to make sure that everyone has access to social security at the end of the day. At the end of the day, what we want is to make sure that whenever a human being experiences a risk of any kind across the life cycle, they are able to also access some relief through the social protection system. And I believe that if we achieve that, then we shall have achieved.
Thank you very much, Alan. Francis, over to you.
Thank you once again. So allow me to look at this in a way of my background of work, being a planner. First of all, I'll talk about the Vision 2040. We are trying to drive the economy from what would be peasantry to middle income status. So with this, look at this program of social protection and what would say inclusiveness. So with social protection, from my understanding, is if we can have access to, as the previous presenter had said, that most of the young people are spending money on their elder parents. So if elder parents are covered for, these younger people can have some disposable income to go and put in the real economy, where there are more savings, where they have more, they have access to bigger markets, and also they can have a spending realm over so much to spend on, hence increasing taxes on certain money that would go to the elderly, but now goes down into the real economy. Thank you.
Returns on investment.
Yes,
Eric,
please.
over to you.
Thank you. I'll talk about social inclusion from the education perspective. I'll borrow her word that no child should be left behind. And also, education is the greatest equalizer. Just think about yourself. If you never went to school, where would you be? Okay? So if you imagine yourself having not gone to school, and also look at your friends you grew with who never progressed in schools, where are they? So you can be born in the poorest of the poorest places, but when you go to school, you are likely to dine with princes, just like you are right now. If you never went to school, you wouldn't do that. So I think the interventions in schools, interventions in children when they're growing up is the greatest equalizer and is the greatest cornerstone of social protection and inclusion. But also when children go to school, you think about those things that exclude them from progressing. Okay, when you look at children, they all go to school in P1, but 50% don't graduate in primary 7, and all those people that never graduate in primary 7 or transit to other levels are going to be excluded almost for the best of their lives. So I think education, but also inputs, which we are going to discuss as we go on, inputs within education to make sure that children stay in school, to make sure that they progress, to make sure that they become useful in the future, is the greatest cornerstone of social inclusion and protection.
Thank you very much, Eric. I will leave the mic with you. And I think the critical question that I really would like to hear you answer is, when it comes to school feeding as a social protection tool, yes, studies have shown that there are immense returns when we actually invest in school feeding. But the question would be, where do we stand as a country, knowing that there's just about, I think, 49% of learners that access school feeding in our schools locally. So the question would be, where do we stand? What strategies do you actually have to incorporate school feeding in our schools?
It's actually more or less than you're quoting. Only 34% receive what we call a hot meal at school. But when you break down to day scholars, only 27%. So 36% involves those who are in boarding schools, but among the scholars, only 27% receive a hot meal at school. What we mean by a hot meal is actually in opposition to the current, to the current speaker who said that people can prepare food at home. Okay, yes, all of us can prepare food at home, but how safe is that food if the child carries it to school? So we are talking about a child receiving at least one hot meal at school, and that can only happen in a school environment. No parent can bring hot food at lunchtime. And because of that, we have been thinking, we have been, as a country, we have been going through a series of thinking. We started with parent-led, where children are supposed to come with packed food. I think some of you did that, and we can see the product for that. But this time we are saying that when children just bring food from home, from their containers, by the time their food reaches at school, it is contaminated, it is unsafe, it's cold, and even children, instead of focusing on what teachers is teaching, they are looking at their foods in their corners, so they cannot concentrate. That's why we are looking at a time where a school can prepare a hot meal for that child. Now, how do we get there is the problem. Every time we talk about school feeding, my friend from finance, it is very much costly. But we say school feeding is an investment. If you are going to invest in something, you have to take some painful decisions. Because if you don't invest, you don't reap. But also, school feeding is not a charity. It's not like we are feeding the hungry people. We are investing in communities. So the school feeding we are talking about from the Ministry of Education is that works within communities. The communities produce food and the schools buy the food from that very, but also will add on our economic stock. Now, as the ministry, we are cooking. And of course, if there are some people from media here, we are not yet out. We are still thinking, we are cooking, and now we are at the time of developing the national school feeding policy. Once that is done, we shall be able to tell the country the way forward. But for now, we are thinking, we are trying to make sure that we are right before we go in, because once you go in, you don't come out. You have to do it and so on. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Before I leave you, as you're thinking, have we already thought about the kind of cost, okay, not cost, let's say the kind of investment that is required to actually be able to roll out school feeding in our schools?
Currently, with the support of the World Food Program, we are conducting a study on how it will cost. But we already have indications. We already have indicators, because currently the government of Uganda and World Food Program are partnering to provide hot meals in Karamoja, and they've done that for several times, and we have seen children retained in school. We have seen increased enrollment, and the model that the country is piloting in Karamoja with support from World Food Program is likely to be the right model, which means that schools buy food from the very communities they are in, and that has already shown progress. But to your case, we have seen that with a minimum only 500 shillings a day. If Minister of Finance gives us 500 shillings a day per child, we can feed these children, and our children can progress and they can finish school.
Thank you. It's only 500 shillings, Francis. Yeah, so next I'll go to, since we're talking about comprehensive social protection, so children, then we have the workers. Alan, where do we stand? We keep talking about how we are largely an informal country. So as we think social protection from an NSSF point of view, where do we stand? What are those innovations that NSSF is actually coming up with? But beyond just the innovations, I would like you to highlight how are we ensuring that we increase uptake of these different innovations or interventions that we've actually come up with? Over to you, Alan.
Yes, thank you so much, Gloria. Just for context, if previously the fund only used to cover the formal sector workers, and that's how it was designed. Dr. Holmes has shared with us this morning that 76% of Ugandans are in the informal sector and therefore were previously not covered. We also had a threshold of employers who only employ 5 or more workers are the ones who were required to come under the NSSF. So that left a lot of workers who are uncovered, still in the formal sector. So what interventions we got from the policymakers is they removed the threshold of over 5 workers. So now all workers can register with the fund, but they also allowed us to go into the informal sector. And we have made some interventions to go into the informal sector. Number one, internally, we set up a department specifically to go into the informal sector, and it has a target of reaching at least 15 million members by 2035. How is it going to achieve this? It's piloting some models. The first model is actually going into the informal sector businesses, for example, like markets and things like that, to see how to effectively go and locate workers, but also recruit them and also put them onto a platform to make contributions to the fund. So far, we have piloted this in Owino Market, where when we went there, we discovered that while we believe that these informal sector workers are independent, everyone gets their money and they start their business and they work independently. We also realized that they actually have associations of things, of entities, which they set up mostly for political advantage. They can negotiate better through those associations. But we also realized that we can mobilize savings through those associations. So right now we're working with them just to see if they can mobilize their members, and then once the members are mobilized, we can recruit them into the fund and we can help them save. We have also realized that they have transactions on a daily basis and they're able to make savings if we give them the platform and the place to save. We have also ventured into the agricultural sector, where we have asked ourselves, how can we mobilize these farmers to come together in a similar way to also come and save? On that side, we're thinking more around common user facilities, whereby we put a facility within a community, and the community members come and use that facility, and the transactions they make through that facility, they're able to also make savings. We have also not stopped there. We have also developed a national agricultural marketing company, which we're calling NAMCO, which is supposed to help farmers to aggregate the farmers and their produce, market it through that agricultural company, and then we scheme off savings for their retirement. So we feel that these interventions will bring a lot of these informal sector workers into the fund and enable them to save for retirement.
Alan, and maybe the other question would be, there's always been existing interventions in the informal sector. What is the viability of actually leveraging on those existing ones to be able to boost coverage for social security in the informal sector?
Well, we have attempted some of those. For example, we had drives just to go and encourage workers. We say, come and we save for you. And we say, look at your friends, they're saving. For example, we had the Friends with Benefit campaign, which is specifically addressed to achieve that, whereby we would put a picture and we say, okay, look at what people have achieved through their savings. Also you, come and save. However, when we came to the informal sector, we realized that it's kind of like, yeah, they have that argument which they place before anything else. And unless you address that, you cannot effectively in the informal sector. We also realized that our lack of presence in the communities, for example, in Owino Market, when we went to Owino Market, they were not familiar with NSSF, and we didn't have presence in NSSF. But because we were able to work with the local leadership in the market, they gave us access to the traders in the market who were able to start making savings. However, that understanding also requires us to be present so that they can see us. It's more, they want to see you, and they want to see how you're capturing their savings. So previously we didn't have any of this, and these are the new ideas that we're implementing now to be more effective.
Before I leave you,
Yes.
would like to explore when it comes to the policy and the policy environment. Is that conducive enough to ensure that you actually are able to do all these things that you want to do? But also, what are some of the opportunities and then the gaps therein?
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to thank the policymakers for the amendments they made to the law and also for the regulations. In terms of policy support, really, the urgent one which we have right now is on the minimum initial contribution of 5,000, which when we go into the informal sector, some people want to save 1,000. They want to save as they transact. So I've made 10,000, I want to save 1,000, and then you're telling me the minimum is 5,000. It's inhibitive in a way. So we have requested that to be revised. On top of that, we also have charges. There are charges which we experience from the telecom companies, because most of the informal sector savers save through mobile, and they are charged. And that charge, it's kind of going against us encouraging them to save. But broadly speaking, in terms of where we want to go as a fund, we want to create the willingness to save, but we also want to create the capacity to save. So willingness, we have done a lot of financial literacy, and we've also done a lot of educational programs just to help people understand the benefits of saving for retirement. On the capacity side, we have done a couple of things. As Dr. Muhumuza highlighted here, there is a problem called jobless growth. So the economy is growing, but the jobs are not growing. And when you find something like NSSF or saving for retirement, it requires you to have a dignified job so that you can save a portion of that for your retirement. So what we have done is over the past 5 years, we piloted the High Innovator Program, whose actual objective was to create jobs through support for SMEs. We did that program with MasterCard Foundation, and we got some good results, especially in the manufacturing and the agriculture sectors. However, for this to be sustainable, we need some policy changes to enable us to mobilize support for SMEs locally without having to require MasterCard Foundation to come in. Because as you're aware, as the world is progressing, countries are becoming more nationalistic. So they want to keep their money in their countries. So it becomes harder and harder to mobilize foreign money to finance a local program. So what we're thinking, and also maybe the people from Ministry of Finance can consider this, is to allow a pool of capital. For example, we have situations whereby there's one side of the economy which is extremely rich, and one side which is extremely poor. This might be by age, or it might just be by money. And we want to see if there's a mechanism to allow the rich people to invest in the startups or starting companies. Now, this can be policy support from, for example, a tax relief of some kind, or when you say, if you invest in a startup and the startup is successful, good. If the startup is not successful, then maybe we can offset your future taxes, or we can offset something like that. Such the rich investor gets their money back and the investment is de-risked. Yeah. So if that can happen, then SMEs can get more financing to fund their jobs without having to go for expensive credit from the banks. And we believe that can create jobs in the long run.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much, Alan. A lot of things happening there for the informal sector workers, but generally the workers. I'll go to Angela. And really for us to try and put all this into context. So as a country, we are, I think the latest SDG report, we are at about 55.8% in terms of achievement. I think the bigger question is whether we'll be able to get to our to the SDG targets by 2030. But then quite critically, what are those like low-hanging fruits? What can we pick on? And how best can we take advantage of the time that we have to be able to achieve the SDG targets for social protection?
I think the answer to the first question around whether we shall be able to achieve the target, I think that one is a no. I don't think we are able to do that. There are a number of things that we have done that we can really strengthen already as a country, we have the policy environment is okay and what it provides for, but what we have to look into is what is missing. I think for me, the programs that we have are still fragmented, and why they are still fragmented, one of the reasons is because we do not have a law. And having a law on social protection that compels government to be able to put enough resources into social protection is key, because then there would be, you know, a legal obligation on the side of government. And we are going into elections, and I've seen the tagline for the incumbent president is protecting the gains. So looking at all the programs they have put in place, I think protecting the gain, one of the ways to protect those gains and, you know, us doing better would be to, you know, have a law that provides for social protection, and where there are inadequacies, people can even go to court and be able to bring lawsuits to government in case of failure to finance it, but also looking at its delivery. I wanted to mention something very particular. We have done research as an organization looking at countries, 7 countries in Southern and Eastern Africa that are having universal tax financed pensions. And out of those 7 countries, we also looked at European frontrunner, Denmark. Usually when we are doing advocacy as NGOs, they tell us, no, don't look at those countries. No, look here. So look at your peers. So we've done that research in 7 Southern and East African countries, but used Denmark as a frontliner where they started. For us having these discussions, I think it's already a milestone. When you look at where Denmark started, that is putting a law in place. This was 1891, and it took them 60 years. So, can I just project? Hello, okay. So, it took them 60 years, but where they started is that they had an agriculture economy with many people in the informal sector, what we are discussing now. And while rolling out that, Germany already had a tax financed pension, but no, Denmark had a contributory pension. Technology is failing us. So they said they rejected the German model, because what the German model was doing was looking at salaried workers. And that is actually why we should credit NSSA for going informal sector workers. So we have the initiatives already in place. So Denmark said, we are not looking at the German model because it's looking at salaried workers, and yet we have a large proportion of the population as agricultural workers, small-scale farmers, but also people in the informal sector. And they said, we need something that is universal. So where they were at that time is, you could say, is where we are now. But I think we are doing well by the mere fact that we are having conversations in this room with policymakers, with civil society, with the private sector. I think if we continued like this, I think it would really be good for us. But one thing we have to get clear, if we are to get to that level, is we have to get away from the mentality of looking at a social protection as charity. We cannot be looking at social protection as a charity. We have to look at it in terms of a social contract, but also as a right that people can claim, that, you know, you cannot take away from them. And also, to take you back to that study, one of the other countries we looked at was Lesotho. Lesotho is not a very rich country. And what happened is that they introduced theirs in 2004. And when they went to the 2007 general elections, we are going into elections, people were so happy. It was very popular, to the level that when people were voting and after the outcome of the election saying that the incumbent was coming back, they were asking people, what made you vote this government again? And people were referring to the law they had put in place, but also providing pension for old age. And their pension is $40, which is about 100 and maybe 20,000. So, but it was so popular in that we are recalling the social contract, because as citizens, there are minimum basics that we expect from government. And if we looked at this as an investment, it would be good. But also key, what we have to do as a country, if we are to get there, is that we cannot look at social protection in isolation. Recently, I was in a Chotela, which just in the middle of Masaka and Rakai, and I met a 69-year-old lady. She has 13 grandchildren, so the children are giving birth and bringing to her. And she was very scared because she told us that there are people who came to her home and told her that she's going to be arrested. And why they are going to arrest her is because the grandchildren are not going to school, and they are going to become thieves later on. And so she said she cannot afford to take them to school because there are costs associated. So she sends them out to dig in people's gardens to be able to get money, to get money or food in kind for the whole family. And are saying that if we have to look at social protection, and if we have to get somewhere in terms of how do we achieve, those targets related to the SDGs on social protection, we have to be very careful how we look at education, because we have seen that, we have also done the research. We know that Uganda is one of those countries where children stayed out school for long during COVID, almost 2 years, and many children went into child labor. They were going into child labor to supplement family incomes. And those children, it has been very difficult to get them back into school. And for them, those who are out of school again, why they are in sugar plantations in Busoga, why they are in gold mines in Karamoja, is because there are costs at schools that are prohibitive. And we have told, in advocacy, our message is that if a UPE school is charging 20,000 development fees, 50,000 development fees, someone can look at that as small money. But for a grandmother with 13 grandchildren to look after, when you multiply that money, that cost becomes prohibitive. So in looking at social protection and how it can help us achieve the SDGs, we have to look at it from a holistic perspective. We look at education, we look at healthcare, because we don't look at healthcare. Even the small money that I'll get in SAGE, I'll have to take it to the hospital because there are no medicines. But also, if we don't fix education and put more money in education, you'll find that children are going to drop out. And Dr. Mhomza earlier referred to, the productivity of each individual. So where is the productivity going to come from if children are dropping out of school and they are getting into the job market at 9, at 12, which is already wrong, that they shouldn't be getting there? I talked to someone in this very compound 2 years ago, a staff of NTV, and I was telling her that, that if you lost your job at NTV, government should be able to give you unemployment benefits. And she laughed. But I'm glad that we are having this conversation, but it is very important that we look at, first of all, social protection from a life cycle approach, be able to make the linkages between healthcare, education, and all those other factors to make sure that we reach somewhere. And the countries that have done it, Namibia, Lesotho, Mauritius, Botswana. Botswana actually has used their money from the minerals to be able to fund social protection, and it is a very, very good example. So we can always look at there, but us having this conversation, I think, is progress in itself.
Angela, you raise a very important issue that we probably tend to leave in the background, but the election period is a very critical advocacy period. And my key question from the civil society perspective, have we prepared our people enough to actually start asking for social protection during this period? Beyond being presented with manifestos, are our people actually able to demand for interventions like social protection?
There are initiatives that have gone on from different partners, a number of initiatives around creating awareness, the number of talk shows that have happened. There are others that are happening right after this forum to create awareness around social protection, first of all, as a right. But also when we talk about elections, we always have to think about the social contract. What is in it for me? And what we have done before is to make socioeconomic rights an election issue. Because most of the time, if you have realized when people come to ask for votes, they don't talk about GDP, they don't talk about economic growth, they will talk about our health facilities, we are going to schools and all that. I think it is to do more of the social accountability and engage more in the social accountability mechanisms and make sure that, we build the capacity, we empower the communities to be able to ask those critical questions. For instance, we are talking about alone social protection. What are you telling your MPs? There's a whole process of lawmaking. What is their thought about that? When we talk about education also as a part of social protection, health as part of social protection, when you interact with your local government leaders, the LC5s and all that, I think it is very critical also because we already have some money that is coming in through different programs. I think we just need to up the game with empowerment of communities to be able to ask those critical questions, first of all, about the money that is coming, whether it is doing what it is supposed to do, but also during this election time, the questions we should be putting to politicians, what they should be telling us, how can we curb the leakages? Because finance will always tell us, you want this, show me where the money is. There are a lot of leakages that we can curb to make sure that those resources are transferred to areas, social protection, education, healthcare. But until we strengthen that demand side, yes, there is work that has been done, also from the social protection community of practice, but we need more actors to be able to engage the communities, such that the engagements between the duty bearers and the right holders are more meaningful. They ask those critical questions about financing. Where is the money going? We have money coming from here. Where is it going? But you also borrow in our name. What money that you're borrowing, what is it being used for? But also the other thing I wanted to ask, to put to the group, just as reflection. Dr. Mhomuza talked about, there's investment, but they don't see the growth. There's investment, there is no growth. For the longest time, we have seen economists talk about, we are putting money in roads. We are putting money in roads. And for us, we are saying, you're shortchanging economic and social rights, because at the end of the day, you need the human capital in all respects. So for the electorate, I think they have to be very critical in that engagement to make sure that even when a law comes out, for instance, we have a Public Finance and Management Act, that clearly says that money from oil resources will not be used for recurrent expenditure. And you're
Gloria,
like, no.
Can you move towards the parting shots?
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we do parting shots, we need to talk to the money. The money part is very important. At the end of the day,
fair and progressive year in, year out, so that even if the tax is increased in the next 5 years, it is not felt on a very big impact for the would-be consumer. Then the other maybe I would say is when we are going for our project implementation for government through the PIMS framework, maybe we can start tying some PIM outputs to what social protection. That is for every project that is going to be done and government investing, is there a social protection component in there? But then also, least but not just to maybe bring it up here, all of us have been beneficiaries of social protection on government because there is free education, healthcare. There are other things that maybe that have been called shortchanging, but I'd look at it as a bigger picture to access the service. So right now there are very many avenues in which we can look at, but also the other, the presenter at Bolton, Dr. Michael Samson, had said something about philanthropic tapping into those philanthropists. So how do we get to them to come and help us and what share our issues of social protection with them, looking at the reducing money coming from abroad with people coming nationalistic every day and day in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis. Maybe just before we go to the parting shots, there's a time where there was a proposal that before any budget for any MDA is passed, for instance, for example, gender budgeting, it has to be conformed to those gender requirements. Can we also see that happening for social protection, that actually before we pass any budgets for any MDAs, we actually have to see them be able to, the social protection component comes out quite clearly through that. I don't know how possible that is.
Maybe
that can be.
Well, let us appreciate that we are buying into the word gender. I, for one, thought gender was man and woman, but eventually, when I joined the gender desk, I learned that gender is about someone who's far, someone doesn't get access to goods and services. So we first of all appreciate what gender is, and government has come a long way with appreciating that. We always do our budgets, of course. They are subjected to Equal Opportunities Commission, who they review them and they submit to us, and they have a pass mark in which is presented before cabinet, a certificate. But also that, even as we do our budgets, we have what we call the cross-cutting issues, where we have issues of HIV, climate change, all that. Then for social protection, that is something very good that has come up. However, in the look of things, and to use the word again, shortchanging, social protection across government, if you were to look at the budget very well, it is so much in there, and they just need to maybe change the nomenclature to feature social protection, but very many things happen. An example, if I'm doing roads to hospitals, someone is going to access medicine, roads to school, chalk roads for farmers who have produce and can't access the market easily. So maybe it is there, it's just about us to track it and bring it out to you very well. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, parting shots. I think, Francis, we can start with you. What are your parting shots?
My parting shots would be, number one is the government is looking at this and we are trying to implement a 10-fold growth strategy. So with this, under social protection, these are enablers. I'm sure we won't have, if we can't have our people being well, we won't have the market for what we want to produce, the market we want to produce. So that means if we don't have the market, we don't have taxes and jobs for those who are being produced. So I believe if we put up more social protection, that means we can have a well, we have a populace which is well-being and well-built to be able to access the goods we want to produce through the 10-fold. Amen.
Thank you very much, Francis. Alan, next to you.
So mine is really for all of us. Let us think of a future. Think about your children, your grandchildren, and think about where they are going to find work. Yeah? Because the future of work is quite complicated these days. They are saying automation, they are saying artificial intelligence, and no one is talking about human beings. So because of that, I think as policymakers or as people here in Uganda, let's concentrate on human beings. Where are our children going to find jobs? Jobs which are dignified, which are fulfilling, whereby they have purpose and they earn an income. Recently, my senior colleague here came and spoke about a situation whereby in the past, people thought that I want to educate my children and they'll take care of me. But now a continuing reality is that you're growing old and you're taking care of your children. So let us see how we can sit and actually create an environment where jobs are created, jobs are good, such that our children can take care of us as it was in the beginning.
Angela, 1 minute.
Yes. We achieved national rollout of SAGE, that is old age pension, but it went up with the age. So we need to lower the age, and we are happy about the developments from government to bring to 65, but we should be looking at 60. Number two, we need to look at social protection as an investment and also change the narrative from charity, because it has also a report. So we should be looking at social protection, first of all, in terms of a social contract, but also as a right that people can claim, but we should also be looking at, in the spirit of protecting the gains, we should be looking at a law on social protection for the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eric, over to you.
Okay, I'll end with this Luganda saying that olugendo njala teludda, like Bagana. Okay, loosely translated that friendship is eating. He who goes hungry never comes back. So if you go to school and you don't find children, just ask where the kitchen is. Okay, it means that our children, yes, we are doing all these interventions, but they are not studying, they are not concentrating, they are getting out of school before time because they can't stay in school hungry. Think of a girl who has gotten pregnant just because of 1,000 shillings chapat. Okay, the girl becomes pregnant because someone can give her 1,000 shillings for chapat. All those are issues with us. And I call upon all of you to support Ministry of Education to reach that level where, like Brazil has reached, where every child receives a quality meal at school. Doing that, we shall make sure that our children concentrate, we shall make sure that we are strengthening our families, and we are increasing household income. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. A hand clap to our panelists. Well done, gentlemen and lady. We're very, very glad for your insights that you've shared with us. And over to you, Commissioner. Please take your seats.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gloria. Let's clap for Gloria once again. And let's clap for the panel. Francis, you really can't give us 500 shillings per child every day to feed them, and the results that you have had, and you told us money will come. Let the money come, let's feed our children. Thank you once again. And when they were discussing, they reminded me of what Albert Einstein said. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We must do things differently if we are talking about real investment in a human capital development. The people to develop this country will not come from anywhere else. They must be our children. The way we feed them, the way we educate them, it matters. One hot meal at school a day can cause a difference. So Francis and Janet, I'm banking on you to tell Honorable Kasaija and to tell the Permanent Secretary of the Treasury that we need this money. Family-based safety nets, investment in children, issues to do. And I want to put this to all of us because I was asked this question on NBS and I couldn't answer. A journalist asked me, does everybody have a right to produce children? I was lost. I tried to say, I think so. He said, now you are the problem. But recently, my former driver visited me. He's 47 years. He has 26 children. 47 years, 26 children. And I'm not creating a story. And I asked him, what's your target? He said, I want 30. I asked him why. Because my big brother, who is 49, he has 36 children. And that's why I was telling you, why are people producing like they have contractual obligation? Because if you are going to have 13 grandchildren and you are still burdening Mr. Isabidi Dajaja to look after your children, I think that's asking for too much. We need to repent and only produce the children we can afford to look after. Because the quality of the children matters. it is not the quantity. So for people just to go, and I told you, 42% of all the pregnancies in this country are unplanned. People just get pregnant anyway. And that's why I have children on the streets, and when they find them, they call, hey, Commissioner, Department of Youth and Children, why are these children on the streets? I tell them I know where my own biological children are. None of those children are mine. Well, they are mine, because I work with the department. But I mean, people should not put their burdens on other people. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the chief guest is just around the corner. And one of the things he is going to do here is to launch the Cash for Work program. And many of you could be asking yourselves, what is the Cash for Work program? The Cash for Work program, in line with the mandate of the Ministry of Coordinating Implementation of the National Social Protection Policy, the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development has designed the Cash for Work program to create short-term labor-intensive employment opportunities for unemployed youth, vulnerable women, and poor working-age adult men and women. The purpose of the Cash for Work program is to mitigate income shocks encountered by the poor and vulnerable households in the refugee settlements and the hosting communities due to forced displacement, effects of climate change, and limited capacity to manage socio-economic risks. When the ministry embarked on the process of designing the Cash for Work program, ILO made a commitment to provide 921,000 US dollars, equivalent to 3.3 billion, for implementation of the Cash for Work program in Isingiro, Madio, Koro, and Terego districts. With the funding from ILO, the ministry expects to support 55 community projects in the 3 districts and enroll 5,500 beneficiaries from eligible households who will earn income for participating in labor-intensive public works projects, such as afforestation, construction of soil and water conservation structures, rehabilitation of wetlands, maintenance of community access roads, and desilting of roadside drainage channels. So this is the program, and we intend to see that the beneficiaries of the program will participate in the community projects for a period of 3 months, and they will earn 7,000 per day for 18 days every month, which translates into 126,000 every month and 378,000 for 54 days. So we think this is part of the way in terms of cushioning our people against the vagaries of shocks, climate, and otherwise. Now, as we wait for the chief guest, who is walking in any minute now, I can see somebody burning with a question. Can somebody move the mic to... you have taken long, you may not manage to take the mic before the chief guest walks in. I'm suspecting I can smell the chief guest coming in. And so, my friend, you can ask quickly without the mic. Keep it there, I'll give you more time. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda, who is also the Honorable Member of Parliament for Rohingya, and who was turned unopposed. Right Honorable, you are welcome. National Anthem and East African Community Anthem, one stanza each. East African Community.
Utaomba uilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Thank you very much. We can take our seats. Right Honorable Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda, Right Honorable Tayebwa, also MP Rohingya North County, unopposed incoming MP. We congratulate you. Congratulations. We'll come back from the trenches, and thank you for being with us. Can you allow me now invite the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Mr. Agure Chibenge, to officially welcome you here.
Right Honorable Deputy Speaker of Parliament, the Honorable Minister in charge of Disability Affairs, Honorable Members of Parliament, Excellencies, Heads of Diplomatic Missions, Development Partners, representatives of civil society organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I was supposed to have made these as my opening remarks, but I'm also aware that our chief guest has requested that we quickly go through this session because of other pressing commitments. But I would like to welcome you, distinguished participants, in your respective capacities to this year's National Dialogue on Social Protection, held under the theme, Enhancing Access to Social Protection for Inclusive Socio-Economic Transformation. This dialogue marks the climax of the Social Protection Month 2025, a period dedicated to reflection, learning, and collective action to strengthen Uganda's social protection system. Through this month, we have had a number of activities aimed at learning from the experiences of different actors or players, while also showcasing how various social protection interventions have transformed lives. Right Honorable Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Minister Grace Asamo led a team to a benchmarking visit to South Africa on disability inclusion, supported by the World Food Programme and UNICEF, and we've had a mini dialogue also to discuss lessons and consensus has been reached on a way forward. We had a field mission to Tayebwa district, funded by UNICEF, which visited 2 groups of adolescent mothers, supported by the Empowering Adolescent Mothers and Their Children program, implemented with support from UNICEF. And during the mission in Tayebwa, the team also visited beneficiaries of the social assistance grant for empowerment, SAGE. Progress made by the program was appreciated, as well as issues of reducing the age of entry into the program, increasing the value of the grant paid to beneficiaries. All these were discussed. Fortunately, as this was happening, Cabinet was also taking decisions on this matter, which I'm sure the minister is better qualified to inform us about. But we have also had several media engagements, and the development and implementation of the National Social Protection Policy, National Social Protection Strategy have all laid a firm foundation for coordinated action. A number of activities have been implemented, and we'd like to appreciate our partners with whom we have walked this journey. These initiatives demonstrate government's commitment to ensuring that no one is left behind in the journey towards inclusive growth and human capital development. Of course, we take cognizance of the low coverage of social protection programs, as well as the new and emerging risks, such as climate-induced disasters, conflicts, and the influx of refugees, which continue to put pressure on households and communities, underscoring the urgency of strengthening resilience through sustainable social protection mechanisms. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to note that we have witnessed or will witness the launch of one of the key initiatives that represents the steps that are being taken to expand coverage of social protection interventions in the country. The Cash for Work program, aimed at providing income support to vulnerable persons who are able to work in refugee host districts of Madi, Okolo, Terego, and Isingiro using the labor-intensive public works approach. This is an initiative that reflects our commitment to advancing a life cycle approach to social protection, ensuring support to seemingly excluded vulnerable categories of people. As we discuss here today, which we have been doing, chief guests, we want to reaffirm our commitment to increasing awareness, understanding, and access of social protection interventions, to amplify advocacy to position social protection as a national priority and a human right, to enhance collaboration and partnership between government agencies, civil society organizations, and development partners for improved social protection service delivery, but also identify best practices and lessons learned from successful social protection interventions in Uganda, facilitating knowledge sharing, replication, and informed decision making. Together, we believe we have a duty to build a Uganda where every citizen lives in dignity, has the resilience and access to opportunity. Without naming them, I want to appreciate all our partners for your technical and financial support. Chief guest, ladies and gentlemen, I want to conclude with a remark made recently at the World Social Security Forum in Kuala Lumpur, September this year, by the Right Honorable Prime Minister of Malaysia, who said a world characterized by inequality cannot endure, nor can a region or a country. And that means our work is cut out. And I thank you for your kind attention.
A world characterized by inequality cannot endure. If you take nothing from this dialogue, please take that home and work towards equality. Our chief guest, allow me now to invite Honorable Flavia Kapahenda, woman MP Chegegwa, to make remarks And thereafter, Honorable Flavia, accept to invite the Honorable Minister for Gender, Labour and Social Development, who will in turn invite the chief guest to address us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity. The Right Honourable Thomas Tayebwa, the Right Honourable Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of Uganda, the Honourable Minister for Gender, Labour and Social Development, the Honourable Members of Parliament, the PS, Ministry of Gender, the Directors and Commissioners of the different agencies, all you champions and players of social protection, media, academia, ladies and gentlemen. I take this great honor to be with you here at the 3rd annual Social Protection Dialogue. Congratulations. It is when we start discussing about things that matter that we get to grow. The celebration here cannot be taken for granted, and neither is it a tradition. It's a reflection of Uganda's growing commitment to build a nation where every citizen matters, regardless of age, ability, or circumstances, and that we can all live with dignity and security. So our gathering here today reaffirms our belief that social protection is not charity, it's a right, and it is a cornerstone of the national development. The Uganda Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection, for which I'm the chairperson and a founding member, has remained at the forefront of the advocacy movement for inclusive and equitable social protection. Through consistent dialogues, policy engagements, and evidence-based advocacy, our forum has ensured that social protection remains firmly anchored in Uganda's national development agenda. We are privileged that the Right Honourable Deputy Speaker is the patron of the forum, and he deserves a clap. This year's achievement is a testament that we have made efforts, and we want to thank the Cabinet that has made a historic decision on the 22nd of September this year to reduce the eligibility age for senior citizens grant from 80 years to 65, back at 65, and that they increase the monthly grant value from 25,000 to 35,000. This milestone marks a very major victory for social justice and reflects the tangible impact of sustained parliamentary advocacy. Furthermore, the critical category of the elderly refugees have also been targeted through a newly launched initiative called Social Cash Transfers for Elderly Refugees that is being implemented in Koboko and Yumbe districts. I think these are pilots because Tayebwa is also a refugee host for a long time.
Deputy Speaker, to congratulate you as somebody who has already secured the next parliament. And I hope you will support some of us who are also flag bearers to come in as we continue with the work for government. I don't have a written speech, so I don't expect the news people to come and ask me interviews. What I'm going to talk are my own thoughts about social protection. And I came here, I was given a microphone down, and I was like, now when I talk, where will I face? I want to see the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker. The other side will see my behind, the other side will see my front. You are not seeing the whole shape of a minister. So when you talk about access, remember disabled people, because that's my area. When we talk about access, you tend to forget about that category of the most vulnerable in our country. So when I stand here, I'm demonstrating. When we plan, are we thinking about everybody? Or we serve to give excuses and say, you give her the microphone, she can talk from here. You deny me rights of seeing everybody in the room. I want to start again by saying, Right Honorable Speaker, when I came here, talking about social protection, again, my president describes me as a woman who is down on the ground. He said it in cabinet, he said, Asamo is always thinking about down, and that's me. Why do I think about social protection? We tend to fix our mind on a certain category of people. And Right Honorable, I was here before you. People have talked, they're talking about old people, vulnerable people who are always blanketed. I don't know who they are. They talk about children. But when I sat here, I said, there was a presenter who said a jobless what? That economy now of us as parents who have educated children to university, but there are no jobs, meaning they are staying at home. Isn't that a social protection issue? When I retire, and Right Honorable, you are really a witness to this. Most of us as members of parliament, when we retire, you really go down. You become poor. You can't even afford a car. You can't even afford the status. Where are we putting that population? Remember, being this member of parliament, I have been supporting these 6, 7 graduates in my house. What happens to that household? Policy analysts go beyond thinking about a certain population. Think about Uganda. And I think we shouldn't be focused in that. Right now we have PDM. But what PDM is about is people getting 1 million. Nobody's thinking, how do we plan social protection within the 1 million, that when the program ends, can we be able to make this sustainable? Can we be able to make this family sustainable? It would have reduced the number of people getting into some of these cash products. Moreover, we are dependent on Uganda non-cash. We are not looking at a situation where there's a system which produces in more money. Because if I have 1 million and I can do maybe agriculture, I get a profit, can I be able to save? I had my good friend from NSS talking about saving. How do we make this money reproductive? Uganda has done a lot of programs on wealth creation. When the program ends, it ends. And that's we pack the bag, think of another thing of government programs. Right now, the president is promising on our behalf 2 million for the graduates who have left what? University. And we're thinking, how does the 2 million transform into a saving that can help us in the society? I could be talking outside social protection, but those are my ideas. We have all agreed that social protection is a right. It's not a charity. But if I am in social protection, how much can I use this money? I heard somebody talking about education. Education is not a classroom. Education is not going to school. Education is the knowledge that is imparted to the population. How can I use this knowledge to develop? I was a primary teacher. I was a very good person practicing what Mondo said. I was producing children, but not, of course, for leisure, as he said. I got 6, that's what the average for an African woman. But I never went begging around to educate these children and educated them. But because within the schools, the money I get as a teacher, I was able to diversify. Today you are getting people weeding their granules, they have harvested. Me, I buy and I store. At a certain time, I would sell it and I would make profit. But talk to the teachers of today. You have to go and riot, you have to protest. Nobody thinks about how do I make my life. Let's imagine Uganda, the government, they call government, because government is not a human being. It's a state. Doesn't have a face. Supposing it closed, does it mean the whole Uganda will close? This is still food for thought. We have a very weak system of getting what we gain. When we say protecting the gains, even what we have, we don't want to protect in our hands. Right, Mr. Speaker, this thing needs a coordination of many stakeholders. And we have talked here, private sector, we have government, we have policymakers, everybody is in charge. I grew up as a village girl, but I never saw my grandmother begging for food in a granary. And it would take us the whole season without knowing. I don't know how she used to do it. You get eggs are hidden, you get granules, you get this ghee, and we're very healthy because I had a good diet. Yes, I had a good diet. So there was prevention of that social security where people, when I get 25, I go to hospital. No, that shouldn't be the issue. What should we put in place to prevent me from going to a health sector? I'm going to deliver a child and I come back home. That's the time I've slept in a hospital. So I think we need to think beyond the coordination mechanisms, how we can bring this. I am also aware that we have a policy. I think my peers talked about a strategy. But right, Honorable Speaker, we don't have a law on social protection initiatives. We don't have a law. Some of them have been the goodwill. I will thank my sister Flavia here that she has really struggled with this thing of social protection. And we came together in the same parliament. I was one of the people she recruited. And right, Honorable Speaker, you know that I've been a chairperson of the Kolo Putin's committee before I was elevated to this other status, but I remain a member of parliament. And I was one of her advocates and would shout in that house to ensure that time we were thinking about all the people and we're like, 25,000, I'll give. But coming to the ministry, I have come to understand that it's bigger than that. I led a team of, as the PS said, to South Africa. In South Africa, issues like NIRA, identify a baby from birth. So a parent or whatever, so that you begin focusing from the time the child is what? Born. They have given them, I don't know what they call them, a NIN number, but they have given a number to this child. So this child is progressively followed. And when I come in as someone, I say, I'm also needing social protection because I'm disabled. They will again track through the NIN to know what are my associates. Do I have a bank account? Do I have a relative who's working? The system helps to follow these human beings so that you get the right people who are beneficiaries. I was sharing with my peers and I said, the program comes, it is us in the ministry who go and mobilize our relatives, and yet we could be able to support them. So I said, there's this program coming with 25,000. Oh, Jaja, you go and register. But this is a well-off home. Now we have left the poor with the poorest who cannot access. So what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that as we design the program, this program currently is depending on government of Uganda. How can we get partners like NSSF, even Minister of Finance to say, this is how this money can come? We are working on our roads, right, Honorable Speaker, because we have a road fund, which we try to put in the law. Maybe we need to put a fund which can support people who reach to this level. And again, I came with the act here of South Africa, Social Assistance Act number 13 of 2004 and the regulations. Smallest, pocket friendly. It's always in my bag, I read it. Because that's where I'm going. I'm going to this level of social protection and need. And that's why you see in some countries, even if people say don't borrow Western culture, those people take care of their old people. This everybody. But remember, it might be what? You. Just like I tell people in disability that it's just time. One day before you die, if you don't die of a quick accident, you'll have to be disabled before you die. So when I talk about disability, prepare. That talk about environments, which are protection now to come on board. Now we are discussing the Child Disability Benefit Program. We are discussing about the old people. NSS is talking about the informal sector. Can we package it well so that we can achieve no leaving one behind? And I believe if we all work together, this will be constructive. And as a ministry, we are ready to work with you, and we shall give you our support where you need the social sector will come in. And I want to believe that as we go out of this room, let it not remain a dialogue. What is called, because the dialogue is about two people. Now we need to make it beyond what? A dialogue. Involve the community, and we begin seeing how people can change in the community. Thank you for listening. I say all this for God and my country. So it is now my singular honor to invite the Right Honorable Speaker, who is also my brother, to come and make his comments, and thereafter launch, is it the cash what? Cash for Work program in this area. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my sister Helen, very strong advocate of rights for people with disabilities, but also social protection. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Sorry, we are in a very busy period. This is a period where it's not sustained. We are up and down, and at 2 I have to go and chair the house. So, yes, so the program was really crazy. So I really want to thank you, Honorable Minister and PS and Honorable Flavia, for accepting to adjust the program for me to appear later. I want to take this opportunity to thank Honorable Flavia Babolo, my brother Patrick Katabazi Kichoncho, and all those who are behind the Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection, but also the Minister of Gender and donors for the strong support you've given this forum. It's an advocacy forum, but it has also made it very easy for us on the legislative side to understand issues to do with social protection and remain focused. And I really hope that they'll continue getting this support, which enables us to easily work together of social. Like Honorable Raboro said, social protection is a very critical pillar for national development. And whoever thought that it wasn't that important, when the crisis, the pandemic hit us, I think when these old people didn't come to their rescue, didn't have anyone to help them, or you had them in your homes without planning for them, that's when you knew that's a very, very big problem. When you go, one of the countries hit hard. And it made me think much more about social protection beyond money. Because I was talking to a friend who told me that in many families, in many homes, it is the stench of dead bodies that informed the community that someone had died. And these were billionaires, millions. with cats, with dogs in their homes who couldn't retrieve them, which means that social protection for some of us